Hello, my name's Carl, and although I'm an Oasis fan, I don't think I'm going to get tickets to the reunion.
I don't think any of us are at that price.
Because I'm too cheap.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I'm Helen, I'm an author, and I did see Oasis. Oh yes, I did, at Newcastle Arena. And
so did I. Maybe not the same gig. But
probably not the same gig.
But I don't think did we know each other then?
No, we did not. No, that was in
No,
my
we couldn't
school
be at the
years.
same gig.
Could have been the same gig and not known it. I am an author, obsessed with all things culture. Cast with my friend Carl about 90s culture because we kind of both were there at the same time, but maybe just slightly different ages, just slightly different age brackets. So he's kind of the Gen Xer of the room, and I'm kind of the X-ennial, so yes. The elder millennial.
And I'm the baby Gen X. Yeah, I'm right on the cut.
Oh, you seem very keen to underline that. Okay, yeah. So I am the older millennial, and you are the baby.
I mean,
Gen
there's
X.
a little bit of debate. I don't want to mortify you, but there's certain ones that put you in the Gen X category, which obviously you will fundamentally reject. But I think
I do fundamentally reject that assertion.
The general cut-off is 1980. I'm
an 81 baby. Yeah, so we're coming at it from slightly different perspectives in that Carl can actually remember 1991 very well.
I'm old,
and as is old, and I can kind of sort of remember it. So we're going to go through these songs now that have been selected as the most popular ones worldwide for 1991. And we're going to start with January.
Starting in January with Enigma, Sadness Part 1.
Let's talk about the video.
Okay.
So the video is kind of like quite religiously themed.
Yeah, no kidding.
Sexualized model woman, which is a theme that we will probably see quite a lot in this year.
Yeah. I mean, starting a song with like priests singing, like that vibe, that's a bold move even for 1991. That's a bit of an out there move. What the actual F is this song about? Like it's just like, I mean, I'm not being funny, but it's just like, if this is all about the girl who's like this exotic looking girl looking into camera and she's kind of like nude a bit and kind of saying these breathy like French phrases and then like heavy breathing, is that why this song was so popular? It
was popular for a lot of reasons. It's kind of like the clubby vibe, and it's quite interesting that it's an instrumental. You don't get many of these on lists of most popular songs. There's a video, and then there's what the song's about. So the song's about a guy called Marquez de Vaza. I'm not good at pronouncing names, but he's basically this guy who got prison for inappropriate sex things. Stuff that would probably be normal now, but was seen as deviant behaviour back then. The woman represents his sexual desire, I think. And there's a lot of sampling going on. There's a lot of influence from this. And this samples James Brown and Soul to Soul. It's not the last song on this list that samples Soul to Soul.
Okay.
Quite a few songs. And even there's a song on this list that samples this. So this samples another song, and then this song sort of samples this. It'll be explained later.
Is anyone else feeling dizzy? The thing is about this is that I don't remember this song at all. I mean, in fairness, in 1991, I was like, I don't know, like 9. So I wasn't in the club scene then, which I guess is who this is aimed at. But I don't know, that kid in the video weirded me out like the second I saw it.
It is weird.
He's having this really weird dream, and it features this woman who's kind of like heavy breathing. I just think, what is this?
I do remember it probably because my sister's probably played it at some point. I mean, it sold 12 million, so it did well.
Yeah, so like 12 million people have this.
But it was also recorded in Ibiza, and a lot of Ibiza vibes have this sort of
I get that.
clubby type thing. Two guys basically put it together.
Yeah, I'm not really sold on this one as a song, but I can see perhaps why at the time it did sort of hit us, strike a note.
I've been to Ibiza 6 times. I can imagine like quite chilling out to a beach, like listening to it. It depends on your mood, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not the sort of thing I'd put on if I was going out to a nightclub or anything like that. Anyway, let's move on from that. So we're coming up to February, and on the model theme, we're going with C&C Music Factory, Everybody Dance, Sweat Now.
Yeah.
So why do I say model? Because they used a model in this video that didn't sing the songs.
Yes, I did know that about this. It's sort of interesting.
Or didn't sing this song. She did actually sing on future releases, but not on this one.
Yeah. This is like one of those kind of timeless kind of techno tunes. For me, a rapper in glasses, that always improves anything. Like if you're going to put something...
You just love your rappers.
I just love glasses. I think that we've kind of understood this. That just, I think putting anyone in glasses just makes everything look better.
Do you love rappers and glasses?
Yeah, why not? I don't want to be kind of exclusive. I don't want to exclude anyone, so sure. I do approve of this. I think it's kind of peak 91 though. It's like hoop earrings, cycling shorts, shirtless muscle men dancing, which is what I'm supposed to be looking at, not the the guy in glasses. But I do think it's kind of it's peak time, like peak 91. But I think it is the kind of thing that if you heard it on the dance floor, you'd be up.
Yeah. Last vocalist, which is Martha Walsh, if I'm pronouncing her name properly, people were sampling at the time from the same Ride on Time, which got sampled quite a lot. She's the same vocalist in this. She was also in the Weather Girls, Raining Men.
You can tell. You can tell that it's the same person. That voice is extremely distinctive, yeah.
But this is out of the Milli Vanilli, post-Milli Vanilli period, where it was slap a model on it's now a no-go, which it always should have been, to video and pretend that she's singing the song. A lot
disingenuous, yeah. I think but that's kind of the music industry in general, isn't it? I think that, it's not the first or last time for something like that to happen. They do want a certain look to particular songs that are released. I think the key thing is the actual song itself. At the time, MTV show was around and people did watch it, but a lot of people have heard this on the radio. They wouldn't have been looking at a model necessarily.
No,
when they were.
I mean, MTV was quite big.
It was huge,
still
but it was
building at the time.
Sure.
Yeah. So the model is called Zelma Davis, and as I do mention, she does sing on quite a few of the future hits from this band. Time Out magazine, I think it is, had it as number 4 best party song.
Wow.
And it was remixed by Bob Sinclair. Do you remember him? 2006.
No, I think I'm too young to remember 2006.
I can't remember 2006. I'm an old man. Borat's favourite song in Ali G in the House, which I never watched. Did you watch that?
No, I did not. Sadly, never got around to that one. I'm sure it's an epic.
And my last fact for this, the final one of the section for March, is Gloria Estefan coming out of the deck.
I'd actually forgotten how absolutely honeyed, just very, very sweet, very, very flowing Gloria Estefan's voice is. And with that kind of gospel backup, I can see why this was a massive ballad hit. A lot of people, I noticed when I watched the video, were commenting about a bus accident that she had been involved in.
Yes.
Maybe this came up in your research as well.
Yeah.
That left her, paralyzed and in a coma, and she had to learn to walk again. And so for people who are big fans of her, and there are many people who are massive fans of Gloria Estefan even still now, because, her music is pretty touching.
Yeah.
I think quite a few of them said that they'd gone to see her live when she walked out on stage and sung this. It was a huge moment.
Yeah, it was a comeback in a lot of ways. Like I say, a comeback in the terms of her music, but also a comeback in the terms of her health. Because what actually happened, I believe, is she was on a tour bus and an 18-wheeler crashed into her. Now, I had to look up what an 18-wheeler was because I didn't want to look stupid on this.
Does it have 18 wheels? I'm just wondering. Are there actually 18 wheels, or is that just a misnomer?
I thought, it's just going to be a massive truck, isn't it? But it's actually a tractor with a trailer on the back.
But the key question is, does it have 18 wheels? Is that a...
I do believe, yeah. I'm a gamer, and there's a game called 18-wheeler, and it's known as the worst game of all time. So that was my reference. But I
think this is a really huge deal, this song, for Gloria Estefan fans, and I can understand why. I do think it's a lovely song.
Yeah,
it's a nice
written by her husband. She had some sort of contribution as well. She basically said, although this accident happened to her, she hates the idea of a pity party.
Yeah.
So this song was like an uplifting sort of idea. When she was going into a hospital, I believe her husband was holding her hand at the time. And maybe he came up with the idea for the song at that point, possibly. What's quite interesting about this is usually when you have B-sides, you have different tracks, but with her being like an American Cuban, so Latino, one of the B-sides is the Spanish version and one is the instrumental version. On basically all of the ones I looked at, there might be certain regions where that wasn't true, but it looked like every region I researched had that. So that's quite interesting. She sort of did stuff with this Miami Sound Machine. It's a bit before our time, isn't it? And apparently she met her husband at the church, So there you go. If you want to meet someone, go to a church, maybe. I don't know. I've been to a church and I haven't met anyone, but that's just me.
I'd just like to put this disclaimer on this. We are not qualified to give out any relationship advice.
Yeah.
And Carl particularly is not qualified to give out any relationship advice. Yes, that's our next
podcast, which is Carl and Helen do not have good relationship advice. Brackets, Carl more than Helen.
I'm glad you clarified.
Because at least one of us has had some successful relationship. So now it's our favourite tracks of the year, and I've gone for Blur. There's No Other Way.
Nice.
The weird thing about this is, if you watch the video, he kind of comes across as Liam Gallagher, which Liam Gallagher isn't a thing yet, so that's a bit weird. Oasis were influenced by Blur.
Yeah.
I don't think they deny that. It's just a very weird video.
I see.
Do you want to add anything?
I just think it is a cracking tune. It's one of those ones that I think, if you look through the Blur back catalogue, definitely stands out as one of their really, decent songs. And of which they had many. And sort of really easy now to look back at the Britpop era and think of it as not that interesting and not that innovative, because it was kind of standing on the shoulders of everything that happened in the 60s to a certain extent. And of course, in the 90s, there was a huge 60s renaissance, just like there was in the 80s. There was a huge 50s renaissance. Whatever age group had the disposable income, it was always referring back to their youth. So in the 80s, people who had the disposable income, they were kids in the 50s. And the same with the 90s, they were kids in the 60s. So, there was always like a renaissance of culture like that. And it's, definitely evident in the 90s that they're starting on the sort of shoulders of the 60s. But I think it's unfair to suggest that all 90s bands are just kind of replicating what happened in the 60s. There is some innovation there, and there is some, leaps forward as well.
I just like the fact that they did Song 2 as a piss take of the Americans, and that was their only big hit.
Yeah, that's so typical, isn't it? But yeah, so I chose from this year Lithium by Nirvana, and I sort of ummed and ahed about this because there's going to be quite a lot of Nirvana chat in general in this podcast, just because of the things that have hit big in this year. But I do think it reminded me when I was looking at the songs for this year that there are, several giant Nirvana hits in this year, and that they really were just starting to kind of climb in terms of their status in the industry. I've heard Dave Grohl talk about where they were at personally at this time, in terms of like they were still sleeping, three of them in a room on a floor. And it's crazy to think about that when they had these amazing, immense hits going on for them.
School.
Several in one year, and they were still having that kind of a road life where they were like, is there anywhere we can sleep for free? All these kind of things. But I think I largely choose this for kind of personal reasons. I feel like, a lot of the university parties that we went to, Lithium was on the stereo, and the house parties. I'm relatively sure that we once watched someone called Badger play on the guitar.
Right. I remember Badger.
Okay, you do remember. I didn't make him up because it could so easily have been an alcohol-fueled hallucination. But no, you believe there is someone called Badger who we did once.
I was at uni for 6 years, so the entire thing was a hallucination for me. I had to pick a song off Nevermind. Like, it's like we were talking about Madonna last episode, how hard it was to pick a song from 1991. It'd be hard to pick any song from this album because it's just great.
Lithium and Come As You
Never
Are.
Mind.
Come As You Are was the other.
Which we'll be talking about later.
Yeah, Come As You Are was the other big hit.
Yeah.
From, so they just had a few in this year, and I still remember the day very clearly when the news was announced of his death. So I just think it's worth kind of remembering them as they were on their rise, and their music continued to be the soundtrack to my kind of university years, even though that was nearly 10 years after they kind of stopped being a band anymore.
And maybe there's another hit that we're going to talk about later in this
Maybe
podcast.
there is. We'll have to wait and see. So moving on through the year, we've got Joyride Roxette in April. So my lingering memory of this song is the phrase, "Hello, you fool. I love you."
Yeah, which if you want the information on that was basically the singer. It was a note left for him by his missus.
Oh, that's adorable. That is so sweet. My sister sung that line over and over again. So she sang it over and over again when she heard it on the radio. And it's sort of a really sweet memory that I have of her kind of singing that. I do think that Roxette, in terms of production, they're just second to none. All of the production on their tracks is razor sharp for the time. They had such attitude as a band.
It's lazy to compare them to ABBA, but you can see why, because they're just, for a start, they're Scandinavian, which is a lazy comparison, but they're just such a great pop band.
Yeah, and people, I think, they think it's kind of a bit corny, perhaps, what Roxette do. Like, I think that some people might look down on it and call it corny.
I can see why.
But I think that's really unfair because it suggests that making this kind of music to this quality is easy, and I don't think it is. I think if it was, everyone could do it. Everyone could have top 10 hits.
The point is they're so good at it, it makes it seem
exactly.
easy. Yeah.
They make it look easy. That's really what I'm getting at. So I do think that they, as a band, had so many well-produced hits. The attitude they had was brilliant. You could see it in the video, just kind of pouring out of them. They look genuinely glad to be there. They want to be there. They want to be there doing this thing. And that makes a huge difference to how their work is received, I think.
Yeah. They got the title from a Beatles interview with Paul McCartney talking about what it's like to write with John Lennon. And he said it was like a joyride.
Oh, that's brilliant.
It's also quite Beatlesque in a lot of ways. Even the most successful bands tend to borrow a little bit and, be inspired by, like a lot of people say, oh, Oasis just stole tunes, or it's like the Beatles. Like everyone at some point who did pop wanted to write a song that sounded like the Beatles, doesn't matter how big they are.
You even look at Pink Floyd's early stuff. Nobody thinks about it now, but they are basically like a tribute band to the Beatles. If you look at something like See Emily Play, you're looking at a band who are very much emulating the Beatles, even though by the time they sort of came into their own, Pink Floyd, they had very much their own distinct sound. They started off looking at the Beatles and going, that looks good, we'll do something quite similar to that.
Yeah, and music didn't start with the Beatles. The Beatles were looking back. But yeah, I really enjoyed that song. Like you said, it's so good, it's effortless.
Yeah, and I think that's something that they do so well with pop songs. So moving on to May, we have an REM track, very, very well-known one, Losing My Religion. We're going to talk about REM later in the album section, but I think what's so funny about this, and I think that REM do this so much in their music, is that if you sort of thought about Losing My Religion, you'd probably think of quite a sort of sad, maybe even low-key song. But when you actually listen to it, the lyrics and the music are sort of a bit of a clash in tone. The riff that they've got going with that mandolin is actually quite upbeat and up-tempo. So it's kind of got this strange juxtaposition about it where you've got this kind of slightly up-tempo, slightly upbeat musical arrangement with lyrics that are definitely about perhaps more sad, difficult, conflicting topics.
Yeah.
So I do think that REM do this really well, where they don't always marry a very sad topic lyrically with a sad lyrical arrangement. They tend to sort of mix that up a bit, and that's what kind of makes their songs a little bit more unique to our ears. And they've definitely done it with this one. What do you think of it?
Yeah, I think a lot of the bands around about this time, and in fact right throughout music history, they've never stuck to one genre, and they sort of like mix and match a few little things. I think basically this song came about because someone was learning to write the mandolin. Was it
Play the mandolin.
Play the mandolin. Was it the lead guitarist? Skiffle bands and Elvis Presley, and all sorts. And they started, like a lot of these bands are lazy, they're just doing Beatles stuff. The Beatles started off doing covers like a lot of the bands did in them days. Yeah. A lot of bands, whether they're inspired by other bands or not, genuinely start off doing their own music. It's not their fault because that's what it was like back in the 60s and late 50s. You generally covered songs or other people wrote for you. That was just the way, If anything, the Beatles broke out of that by, breaking that model, but not at first. Anyway, we've gone off on a Beatles tangent.
I mean, it's very easy to get on a Beatles tangent, and everyone loves a Beatles tangent, so it's all fine. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just think it's, I get what you're saying. There's a sort of Beatles-esque element to this song, and possibly that's part of the reason for its popularity. But they're definitely a force to be reckoned with at this time in music, and their songs are still played and enjoyed now. I think that's really the test of them.
The video's fun, isn't it? It's like, fun. I mean, obviously green screen because they're like, "Oh, we're driving." It's like you're not
driving like in an old movie. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Even back then, people were like, "Yeah, you want like a green screen or something."
Even then, we knew, we understood.
It was number one in Germany for 8 weeks.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
And it was also played at the Stanley Cup for ice hockey, I think.
It is. And you know what? I was out in Canada when the Stanley Cup final was on this year.
He was basically learning the mandolin, and this is how he came up with the tune. And it's sort of written watching TV and recorded in New York. Oh. You like a bit of New York, don't you, Helen?
Thank you, Carl. Yes.
Vocals, you're probably not surprised to know, in a Whitney Houston style, were recorded in one take.
Yeah, I can imagine that. I did think I did know that about that, actually, this particular song.
See, the video has a lot of religious themes, right? So it's very confusing because you're like, oh, right, okay, losing my religion means I'm losing my religion. But it absolutely does not mean that. It means being generally frustrated and losing your civility.
I mean, I think that's the beauty of a lot of REM songs is that you can interpret them in lots of different ways. They obviously have an intention when they write them. They have a subject. They have things that, they're thinking about. But a lot of them, when you look at them lyrically, you could interpret them however you wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, that's the beauty of songs. Like, once you hear it, it becomes your own song.
Yeah.
I think a lot of songs this year could be used in weddings, could be used in funerals. And this is one. This is inspired by Caravaggio. Did I say that right? Because I think I did. And the video was based on a short story by Gabriel Marquez.
Marquez, yeah.
And it won 6 MTV Awards.
Oh.
And it was the first of their videos to get 1 billion views on YouTube, which is not easy for a 1990 song.
No, definitely.
And if you've ever noticed that.
Oh my gosh.
And it was also covered by Hootie and the Blowfish.
Thank you for that.
And that's enough fact.
That's definitely enough.
That is your fact reel.
Factoids on Losing My Religion. So June is I Want to Sex You Up by Call Me Bad. So it's, I don't know, I've always thought this is kind of a zany little song.
There's a lot of sex in this year.
Yeah, there is. Something happened. It's a very horny year, 1991.
There was Salt and Pepper before that, wasn't it?
Yeah. I'm not sure if it's like the falsetto voice in this that kind of weirds me out a little bit about it.
Do you think it's a bit Timberlakey?
A little bit. Or should we say that Timberlakey is a little bit Call Me Bad?
I like to read YouTube comments. Some of the comments were quite interesting. Boy band from Wish was my favourite comment, which is a bit nasty.
That is harsh, but I totally get what they are getting at.
Yeah, because in the early days of boy bands, believe it or not, it was more important to actually sing than look good.
Amazing, isn't it? Imagine a time where that was the case. Who could have ever foretold that?
Controversial at the time because a woman looks like she's going down on someone. And they talk about sex, you know.
All of these things were very controversial in 1991.
I don't think they had a massive career after this. But this
it doesn't totally shock me. It doesn't totally shock me that they didn't have a massive career.
No, this for me is probably one of the least interesting songs. Let's move on. Unless you want to add something.
No, I think it's a little bit of a strange song, but I think the boy band from Wish thing has it pretty much well summarised. So this section of the show I want to call the worst pick of 1991. Carl wants to call it the most overrated. I don't think I have picked the most overrated song. I think I've picked the one that I'd rather not listen to. So the thing that I think is kind of the worst song. So my pick is Jason Donovan's Any Dream Will Do. See, I didn't even get the song title out and you just started laughing.
I didn't even know this existed. That's why I didn't pick it.
You didn't know that existed?
No, I knew it existed. I just didn't know it existed in 1991.
I thought you were a Neighbours fan. You didn't keep track of Jason Donovan's pop career?
Someone else made it a long time ago and they just slightly altered it, didn't they?
It's Andrew Lloyd Webber.
Yeah, it's from a musical.
And it's Jason Donovan singing Andrew Lloyd Webber.
Yeah.
And I remember it coming out. I remember I was a Neighbours fan at the time. Before Andrew Lloyd Webber's lawyers get any ideas, it is just a personal preference.
Can I say, that's not copyrighted?
No. So it's just a personal preference that I'm stating. It is nothing to do with objectively saying this song is terrible. It's just that I would prefer never to hear it again. And I just think it's, again, like, there were other things that they could have been doing with Jason Donovan in his pop career than getting him to sing an Andrew Lloyd Webber song. It's not my favourite.
Yeah, it's mush. It's not an original song because it's already, existed in the world before. I think he did a lot of covers. I mean, like I said, this was probably post.
If it was an original song,
Waterman and all that.
Yeah, I was going to say, if it was an original song, then it was definitely a song that was basically manufactured for him to sing. So that's my pick. And what's your pick?
My pick is, and everyone is going to scream at me for this, because this was a big hit this year, and a lot of people liked it. It's Extreme, More Than Words.
Oh, yeah.
Now, why do I not like this song? Now, I acknowledge it's a good song, but to me, Extreme were this metal funk band that came up with, like, cool, rocky, edgy songs, one of which being Get the Funk Out, which sounds a little bit like a swear word. That's not the reason I like it, but it adds that little, if you watch that video and then you watch this, you're like, is this the same band? Are these the same people? Now, even I can tell that this has got hit written all over it, but do you know what the record company said? They said, do not release this song. Now, I can see why. It's not because it's a bad song, but some songs just kill careers in the sense that if you wander too far away from your demographic, you go into areas and be like, I can do this, that, and the other. But a song just becomes so massive that that's what you're all about, and you're a genre that's miles away from that. That's going to be an albatross around your neck. And in fact, that's what happened for them, because they got to a point where they didn't want to play it live. People turn up, they want to hear the hits. Doesn't matter whether you hate them or not, because you're sick to death of them, you've got to play them. And that's the bed that they're made with. This song, in a lot of ways, it's a beautiful song. It's, the video is black and white, which gives it that certain edge. It's stripped down guitars. But I just think it's so basic. I think it's a sort of song that they should have given to another band, really. Yeah. So, yeah, I feel like a lot of people are going to disagree with me on this, because we're talking about wedding songs and funeral songs. I'm sure this is probably more of a wedding song than a funeral song. But,
yeah, I mean, people can feel free to write in the comments how hard they disagree with you.
Helen, if I die first, please don't play this at the funeral.
Okay. So people can feel free to write in the comments how hard they disagree with Carl or myself on these worst picks.
I think it's easier to disagree with me on this one.
But for now, we're going to move on to the next few songs.
Coming on to July, we have Scorpions, Wind of Change. Now, a lot of people think this is just about the Berlin Wall, but in fact, I think it's about revolution, general sense of change and optimism and hope.
I definitely felt like when I was watching the video, that it had so many images about the end of the Cold War, or sort of thinking that was in the past now, it's time to move forward. I know that the Berlin Wall, that fell in 89, so I'm sure that, this song definitely had maybe its roots in that. But
I think it's because they're German and basically, it's very linked to Berlin and things like that.
It makes sense. I mean, there must have been a huge feeling of change in Berlin at that time. I remember being in primary school because I was very young, and my teacher.
So was I.
Yeah, my teacher wheeling in the TV to show us the Berlin Wall falling the day that it happened, because it was that much of a momentous event. It was like, you have to see what's happening here.
You got to skive off at school.
I thought it's skiving, but I would think, primary school is largely a skive off anyway, isn't it?
I mean, that was the best moment when the video was wheeled in.
Exactly.
You're like, we're not going to do work, we're just going to watch videos.
Yeah, it's brilliant. So, but that was actually an important thing, and I'm glad that they showed me it, because otherwise I probably wouldn't have known about it. And this song, I love how gravelly his voice is, firstly, the vocal performance in this is just beautiful. And I just feel like it's one of those songs that I know it exists. I've heard it before, but revisiting it for this podcast, it's just reminded me what an absolute stone cold classic it is, and how, really it's a song that I feel should be better remembered. Yeah,
I mean, we were talking off the podcast about songs that you necessarily didn't like or hated or were apathetic towards, and then listening to them later and seeing them in a different light. I always kind of wrote this song off, but again, when it comes to difficulty, it's actually quite a difficult song, I feel like. Yes, it gets swept up in the whole end of the Cold War and Berlin Wall, and sometimes, a bit like Elton John with the Diana thing, people want to attach themselves to some music. But as music itself, I think it also stands up quite well. Did quite well in the UK as well. People just think of it as a European hit, but it got to number 4 in the USA, so it was widespread hit, not just in Germany and places like that.
Yeah, I get that, and I think it doesn't surprise me that this touched people and really spoke to them at the time. I can really imagine that, and I for one, I'm really glad to have had the opportunity to revisit it, just to do this podcast. It's reminded me that this song exists. It really beautifully captures a moment in history, but it also is kind of an uplifting song regardless of when you're listening to it, so I think that's a lovely thing. Yeah,
there's a Ukraine version apparently now, which was recorded with I think at least some members of the original band and some other people, and also it's widely known as a conspiracy theory that the CIA helped write it, apparently, which is completely untrue, according to the band anyway.
I don't know. I think it may be untrue according to the band, but the CIA definitely did get songs written for propaganda purposes. So
propaganda exists?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know exactly the ins and outs of it, but I do know that, shall I say, there are rumours. I can't say categorically. Yeah. I don't want the CIA.
I mean, we don't know. Is this going to turn into a conspiracy podcast?
No, it's not.
But if we just talk about facts, apparently the idea came to the lead singer, when he was in Moscow and he was looking at the Gorky Park River, and that's officially where it came from. But unofficially, we don't know.
We don't know.
So August, this is Bryan Adams, Everything I Do It For You. Is that in brackets, that bit?
I think it is. The second bit, I think, is in brackets. I think if you say Bryan Adams, Everything I Do, most people know exactly which song you're talking about. I just remember this being at number 1 for ever.
Yes, so it was number 1 for 16 weeks in the UK, but in Europe, in the European charts, it was number 1 for 18 weeks.
Oh my God. I mean, and I do, having revisited it and trying to forget how sick I was of hearing it at the time.
It's a great song.
It is a good song. It's a really great song, and his vocals are lovely. They're so husky and gentle and warm. It's perfect for a romantic song. Obviously, it's teamed with the Robin Hood film.
Yeah, we got gaslit a little bit because we're trying to find the video, which we thought was Robin Hood in the background and all that, but we can't find it.
I know that video exists. Okay, I saw that video in 1991.
Please tell us it exists and we just didn't dream this.
If you can please confirm that we did not dream this video up, separately in our own brains, and somehow came together 20 years later to make a podcast.
So there was another video, which is, it's just him playing a gig to a lot of people.
Which is fine, but it's not the same as having the movie put into it. And again, I think this is one of those songs we were talking about Roxette earlier, that people will think that writing a song like this is easy. And actually, it's not easy, because if it was, again, everyone would be doing it. If everyone could write a love song like this, everyone would be doing it, and they'd be
It's not easy, definitely. But what you've got to remember is years and years of practice and talent and experience can give you marvellous things. And apparently this was written in 45 minutes.
I mean, that's
Believe that if you want. I don't know. That's what I was told. So that's what I'm saying.
not impossible. Not impossible.
But, like I said, it's not that 45 minutes that you spent writing the song. It's all the years of practice of writing songs and performing and understanding music that goes into being able to get something out in 45 minutes. Because I think this was commissioned for the film specifically, so this wasn't a standalone song. And if you want to know the countries where it wasn't number one, that was Italy, Panama, Spain, and Zimbabwe. So if you want to move to one of them countries, maybe you'll never hear that song again if you don't like it. But as we've established, it's a great song.
Yeah, it's a great song. Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to Metallica, Enter Sandman.
Which is the month of?
Which is the month of...
September?
September, yes. Note to self, write down the month. So, this is so Metallica, because the Sandman is a mythical beast. We'll say beast, because that's how they interpret it, but it's actually a benevolent folk tale, where it's generally quite nice and kind
Yes.
and, gets children off to sleep. But no, not for Metallica.
No.
They've decided that it's somehow Freddy Krueger.
Yeah, they don't have benevolent creatures in their videos. I think I said, when I was listening to this again, it was something that I didn't hear back in 1991. Metallica were not on my radar when I was 9 years old.
No,
it was
me neither.
something that I heard later in life. But when I heard it again, I did feel like metal bands get a reputation for just kind of screaming down the microphone and not really having any tune or melody. And that really isn't the case for Metallica, or, particularly not with this song, I think. It wouldn't be my genre of choice. But I can appreciate what they're doing here, and I just feel, going back to sort of Nirvana chat to a certain extent, I feel like this song doesn't sound a million miles away from the Foo Fighters sound. And, indeed, when I looked it up, found out that Dave Grohl himself was a very big fan of Metallica, that he sent off for their album on cassette in 1983 and, loved it. And I think that when you love bands like that and you're a musician, it's only sort of natural that they're going to get influenced in one way or another by them. So I did feel sort of slight Foo Fighter vibes from this song. And I can sort of see the through line, if you know what I mean, from this kind of work through to where, the Foo Fighters and similar bands are making music.
Yeah, apparently they got inspired by Soundgarden, which you've mentioned you quite like.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me, actually, yes.
It was recorded in a very weird way, I think. Most bands try and do some sort of element of live recording. Apparently all the instruments were recorded separately and the drums were recorded 50 times.
Oh, God.
So maybe like a little bit of a Frankenstein monster when it comes to putting this together. It's produced by Bob Rock. I mean, that's a cool name, isn't it?
I mean,
I'm going to pretend I know who he is.
And you just sound like you've got a future in the biz when you're called Bob Rock, isn't it? It's like, what shall I do for a living? Well.
And they were also sued by a band called Excel, which I'm informed don't work for Microsoft. But, a lot of bands get sued for this sounds like this. And
yeah, sure.
There's only so many strings. There's only so many
notes.
chords.
Yeah, so many chords.
And I'm not saying that, they didn't go to one of their gigs and listen to it, but unfortunately that's the way that it works. Works like that in comedy as well, quite a lot.
Well, that's just what Ed Sheeran was saying out in front of the courthouse, wasn't it? It's
Talking about Ed Sheeran, he was born this year.
He was born this year.
Yes.
In 1991. Well, the thing is, he was stood outside the courthouse after that Marvin Gaye suit, just saying, these are the chords that we use to write music, and nobody has monopoly over those. So, and I think that's about as fair a view as you can take on this, that, if you're Ed Sheeran or anyone else, you acknowledge that some people are going to use a similar pop chord progression as you do in some of the songs, but you can't just go around suing people just because they're using similar chord progressions. That's not how it works.
No.
So, I do think it's sort of interesting when those things pop up.
I mean, can you imagine Oasis existing if you can't use similar chords that have been used before?
Don't look back in anger.
Even in their own songs, you know what I mean? Let's just use that bit from whatever and we'll use that bit from Wonderwall.
Absolutely, yeah.
By the way, I do like Oasis, but, this is the way that music works. Maybe not as blatant as Oasis were, because they actually admitted to it. A lot of bands didn't. So you've got to give them credit to that. That's Oasis tangent number 2 or 3. Anyway, so a few little facts in this. So not only was it used in torture, apparently, in 2003 when the whole Iraq thing was going on, it was also used as a way to wake up astronauts by NASA. Weezer covered it as well. And Helen, you won't be surprised by this one. It was number one in the end-of-year charts in Finland.
I mean, yes, call me unsurprised. Thank you for that.
And apparently it's also, a lot of these songs are going to be used as entrances to the darts or the football or whatever. Apparently this was used as entrance music to Brentford and the Welsh rugby team assembly or something like that. And I think that's enough facts from me about that.
The next portion of this podcast is a new addition to the episodes, and we're going to be picking a wild card choice. And that is, we're going to be picking something perhaps from a different kind of media, but still musical related. An example of this is I'm going to pick the song Only the Lonely by Roy Orbison, which featured on the soundtrack of Only the Lonely, starring John Candy, Ali Sheedy, and Maureen O'Hara. For those of you who haven't seen this movie, I'll warn you right now that it is definitely a movie made in its time. Maureen O'Hara says some very non-PC things about race. But that aside, it is quite a sweet romance about John Candy having a slightly overbearing mother in Maureen O'Hara who, has these not so PC at all views about race. And, in the film, John Candy and Ali Sheedy are both appalled by her behaviour. She's kind of shown as this very old-fashioned woman who's very overbearing and wants her son to just stay with her for the rest of her life. And that's kind of set up to the romantic comedy element where you've got Ali Sheedy and John Candy, kind of outcast characters trying to find romance with each other, despite Maureen O'Hara doing everything in her power to stand between them. So that is my pick. What's yours, Carl?
My pick is Streets of Rage soundtrack. I just felt like it was a bit criminal to not mention this in this year because it's just so influential in future music creations, and it's just such a introduction to even a genre of music to someone as young as myself. I'd be 11, 12 at the time. I like beat 'em up games, which is what it is, but the Streets of Rage series, as well as known for being good computer games, they're more commonly actually known for the soundtrack. A lot of, a joke is basically it's a soundtrack with a game attached. And the guy who came up with the soundtrack is known as a bit of a genius composer, called Yuro Koshiro. He even created his own programming language just so that he could program certain musical elements to the Mega Drive, the Sega Mega Drive, which this was on. The guy himself, he learned to play the piano at 3 years old. So, bit of a genius. There's a lot of house and funk and trance and all sorts of things in the game, which was not very typical at the time. And as mentioned in the first song that we mentioned, Sadness Part 1, this samples that song in one of the stages, but it also samples Soul to Soul. It might even be the same song that Enigma samples. It's probably a different one, but yeah, and it's just great. There's a YouTube video if you want to go watch it, where it's basically like a DJ set in a nightclub just with his songs, and the other guy that he did stuff with in the second game, but he basically did all the music for this one. Maybe I'll link that in the links. But yeah, I felt like I wanted to introduce this category because I felt like I couldn't ignore that because it's, if anything, that got me into that sort of music because, like I mentioned in the last episode, my sisters like that, and you tend to not like what your sisters like. So anyway, so that's Streets of Rage soundtrack, also available on YouTube if you search it.
Lovely. So moving on now into October, we've got Guns N' Roses' Don't Cry, which we have discussed just off the air, that this is one of Guns N' Roses' gentler songs, lyrically and musically, I would say. Definitely one that strikes me as something that is not their norm. I do think that it's a good song, but it's definitely the kind of thing that you'd expect to hear from Guns N' Roses. I do remember the video quite vividly from 1991. I do remember this coming out. Guns N' Roses wasn't really my thing at the time.
No,
and
not mine either.
That's something that over the years I've learned to appreciate and value their music. But at the time, I was just a bit too young to kind of appreciate that. But this is definitely, I feel like a sort of sideways step for them musically. What do you think, Carl?
Yes, it's a good song. In a way, it's similar to the Extreme Situation, so they're out of the comfort zone. But there's still a lot of their DNA in there. It's more, for me, it's more the vocal style that's somewhat out of sync with what they do. Because I just think of Guns N' Roses, primarily of the guitar parts, which are still here, and the bass and stuff, but also Axl Rose, basically, for want of another word, screaming. And he did not scream in this song. I mean, it's a beautiful song, but it's not like, it's very ballady, and it was quite cliche at this point for a rock band like them to do this, so it wasn't different in one sense. But, apparently it was inspired by Izzy. I think Izzy, the rhythm guitarist or lead guitarist. I'm presuming rhythm, because I'm guessing Slash is the lead. This is how much I know about Guns N' Roses. But yeah, basically he went out with this girl and she told him not to cry when she dumped him. So that's kind of where this came from. Yeah. And there's also a female vocalist on this, and I'm going to butcher her name as well. Shannon Hoon, I think it is. Yeah. She's in a band of her own. Yeah, it's good. There's quite a few versions of this. I think you get 2 versions on most of the singles, and then there's another version somewhere else. And it's because they've got 2 albums this year because they're greedy. And on each album, there's a different version of the same song with different lyrics and stuff, which is just a bit weird. I think sometimes you can have too many yes men in a room, and you just need like a record executive to go, no, one album, no, don't do 2 different versions of the album on separate albums. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's very interesting, but I know you say not a particularly sane choice. So moving on then to November. It's a huge album in terms of its enduring influence, and this one comes from. I'm going to talk about the album soon, but it Smells Like Teen Spirit by Nirvana from the Nevermind album, and this video is it's my enduring image of them as a band. I think just Kurt in that stripy sweater, Dave just headbanging on the drums, and Chris like jumping up and down on bass, and just the cheerleaders.
Yeah,
it's just a genuinely good rocky grunge song.
It's basically their Wonderwall, isn't it? It's like, and I have the same feeling that I have with Wonderwall. It's like, I appreciate it as a song, but when you hear all of the songs, you're like, that's not even in the top 10 for me, or certainly not top 5. It's a great song, but they've got so much more than that, and a lot of people just think of them as that. It's like, we're talking about Guns N' Roses, right? I remember going on holiday, and basically Guns N' Roses to me was a t-shirt. Right? And a lot of people complain about kids now wearing hoodies and not even know the songs. That was me in the 80s. I didn't have that hoodie, but it looked cool. I almost got it.
Yeah.
So I would have been that kid. And this is, but talking about the song, this got unnoticed. They've been kicking around since the 80s.
Yeah.
This is off their second album.
They've been through several drummers.
Yeah. And it's funny, the guy who produced this ended up being the drummer, percussionist, what's the difference, in Garbage.
Oh, brilliant. What a great band.
Yeah. Butch Vig, is that how you pronounce it?
That sounds right.
Yeah. So this was inspired by the Pixies to a certain extent, which is, does that baby floating around, is that coming from Blur or the Pixies? Probably the Pixies. But yeah, apparently one of his friends, I think she was also in a band, once said to him, Kurt, you smell like Teen Spirit. And Teen Spirit apparently was a deodorant. But no one told Kurt that because he didn't know. And he just thought, oh, you mean I've got the spirit of a teen. So everyone's like, why are you promoting a deodorant? Are they paying you for this?
Yeah, that's adorably naive, isn't it? So sweet.
Yeah. Apparently done in 3 takes. It's also got over 1 billion views on YouTube. Known for being on The Word. And it's also known for being on Top of the Pops as a legendary performance because Top of the Pops are notorious for not letting you play live. And he forced them to make him play live, but also he did it as a sort of like protest joke. So he did it in a sort of Morrissey from the Smiths style, even changed the words and made it really low and like that. It's on YouTube somewhere. Look it up. It's iconic. A Weird Al version, I think everyone knows that, don't they?
There's a Jewel version as well.
Jewel.
She covered it.
Tori Amos, many others. Yeah. So I think everyone knows this song. So we'll move on.
We will move on to December, which is Black or White by Michael Jackson. And I can't even really get to grips with this video at all. Macaulay Culkin.
The short version of the video, which is 6 minutes long.
Yeah, exactly. That was the only one I could bring myself to watch was the short version. And like Macaulay Culkin channeling Kevin McAllister in the video.
To be fair, it's the same dude who did the Thriller video, and I don't think anyone would argue that wasn't a good video.
John
you can
Landis
see
John
why.
Landis?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh my god. Well,
Yeah.
all I can say is Michael Jackson must have had quite a lot of influence over this, because the Thriller video is brilliant, but this is baffling in all respects, and I don't even recognise it as the work of
Not your favourite song of the year, then?
not my favourite song of the year, and but also it's just the video is so baffling. It's like this really weird cross between Home Alone and Back to the Future, where he puts the amp on high to blow his dad like through the roof. It's like, what the hell?
Yeah, and then you've got the Aborigine,
They've got
the
lions.
tribal people.
Tribal, and then we're in Russia. Like, I don't know, like it's just a really weird video. So I have to believe that John Landis did not get the final cut on this video. That's the only way I can sleep at night. And especially when it features Macaulay Culkin lip syncing to a rap song. And it's just, I don't know, it's just a very bizarre, disjointed video. What did you think of it?
Well, there's some interesting morphing techniques in this,
There
which
are,
is the same people who did Terminator 2, which also came out in this year. Just wanted to plug that, my favourite film of all time.
You can't see, but I'm rolling my eyes.
Yeah, Helen is rolling her eyes.
I mean, you talk about Terminator 2 every single time I've seen it in the last 25 years.
I've got a poster on the wall. It's my favourite. What can I say? You know what I mean? Tyra Banks is in this video, a young Tyra Banks. Obviously, supermodel and all that, but I know her more from being like bitchy on, is it America's Top Model or something like that?
All her classy appearances then.
Yeah. Apparently grabs his crotch in this video, just like you do. You know, I was thinking Bo Selector, and he goes, hee, Shimon, all that. Maybe that's where it came from, but I don't know. And apparently, as far as records go, I mean, he had everything, didn't he? He had all the producers. This was never not going to be a hit, but apparently this was the fastest charting single since the Beatles Get Back. There's a Beatles callback. And also, before YouTube, this managed to get like 500 million views. I don't know where they're viewing it. Like, I mean, most people didn't have like MTV back then.
No.
MySpace in 91?
I don't know. No, it seems a bit early.
I think it was like it was played live worldwide at the same time or something like that. Anyway, yeah, I mean, Michael Jackson, legend. What can you say? He's done loads of great songs. And I do like this, but when you've got so many to pick from, I don't think this is in my top 5 or top 10.
No, it's not mine, but I do see why it's record. The video will always be perplexing to me, but I do see sort of lyrically why it should record with people, but no, not in his top 5. Definitely not.
And that concludes our list. And now we just need to talk about the top 5 albums of the year. Okay, so the albums are Michael Jackson, Dangerous, Nirvana, Nevermind, Pearl Jam, 10, R.E.M., Out of Time, and A Tribe Called Quest, The Low End Theory. Now, I didn't expect my favourite to be A Tribe Called Quest, The Low End Theory, but it was, because it's just hip-hop, rap, so clever, creative. Apparently Busta Rhymes was a guest on this, and that got him his massive break. It's hard to describe without listening to it, but it's very clean. I mean, it's the only one out of these albums that didn't sell that well, but it's just, so influential and widely thought as a great album. And I'm glad I listened to it. I listened to all of these last night, and I had a jolly good time.
I think that's great that you sort of listened to something and it's actually been a surprise to you, like which one you chose. I think I went in sort of knowing the likelihood of which one I would choose, just because it was such a cultural touchstone for me and my generation, when it came out, which is the R.E.M. album, Out of Time. And I feel like this was like a precursor to Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pill, not in terms of content, but in the terms of ubiquity.
I love that album.
Yeah, right. So, I feel like everyone from my age group has 2 albums that you will definitely find in their CD or cassette collection, and that is Out of Time by R.E.M. and definitely Jagged Little Pill, and probably Nevermind. You'll probably find that also. So there's sort of 3 albums I think you probably find in almost everybody's CD collection. And R.E.M. had so many amazing tunes out this year alone from that album, that are still very much thought of as some of the best songs that they ever did, some of the most recognisable songs, also some of the most kind of
shiny, happy people.
Well, that's the one that I think is the most probably widely received, one that was widely received well.
Is that satire? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it is satire. I think that's another great thing about it, is that you can read it that way.
It's either the most positive song ever, or it's taking the myth out of positive songs.
I think whichever way you read it, you can get joy out of it. So I think that's a really lovely thing. But I do think that, the album was the one that just really catapulted them to fame after several years of working really hard in the music industry and not getting much traction at all. I mean, some traction, but not as much as you'd think a band like that.
I mean, it did pretty well in the 80s, but yeah, I think they got a lot of critical acclaim for this album.
Yes, exactly. They were finally properly recognised, I think.
I mean, I love the album. I love the singing. I love everything about it. But my favourite thing is Michael Stipe. Is it Stipe? Michael Stipe's dancing is just... Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You're talking about like interpretive dance?
Yeah. And
baby.
Completely free spirit. Yeah, I get you. So that's my honourable mention album, and I really hope that everyone has enjoyed listening to the show. As you can tell, this is kind of a nostalgic endeavour for us, sort of feeling our way back through the music and the music that was around when we were small and young and still kind of learning about music. Please leave some comments down below about what you think about the music that we've talked about, anything from this year that you think we've missed. And we look forward to talking to you again next time for 1992.